Good afternoon. Welcome to episode 92 of the Blunt Talk Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Wright, coming to you from the beautiful, chilly, and fall-like conditions of Atlantic City, New Jersey. Wherever you may be watching or listening, I thank you as always. Like, share, and subscribe. It helps the channel. You can check the show out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and as well as on Substack. Hopping right into episode 92, we're going to get into college football week 12 recap edition. A lot of good games from this past weekend. I definitely wanted to touch on. I'll admit I'm pissed at myself to a degree because I did not initially give it as much attention as I gave, NFL Week 11 this week. I was more or less kind of worried about those games and focused a lot on that. That episode will also be coming up. You'll be seeing later on. But right now, I definitely wanted to make sure that I address those college games because there were a ton of fucking college games that were great. And a ton of them I definitely want to get into. I really just keyed in on, let me see here, I keyed in on about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Keyed in on about 5 games, 6 really, 6 games in total that I thought were important that I definitely wanted to speak on. So hopping right into the first game, the Oregon Ducks versus the Wisconsin Badgers. I keep continuing to say that Wisconsin, although they're not a powerhouse team, they're not well respected like some of the other teams in their conference, the Ohio States or the Penn States may be. And then with the inclusion now of those Pac-12 teams coming to that conference and now including themselves in the Big Ten, pretty much cannibalizing what was left of the Big Ten, it's a lot. It's a lot for those teams. It's a lot for those players. It's a lot for a team like Wisconsin to more or less overcome those, better teams and better rosters and better athletes. However, before I go into giving credit to Oregon, shout out to Wisconsin. Shout out for the toughness they displayed and the way they played. Their quarterback here, what's his name, Brandon Locke, didn't have a great game. He was 12 of 28, only had 96 yards. He didn't really throw the ball that well. However, their rushing attack was pretty good. Tyree Walker, he had 20 carries, 97 yards. Longest run was 22 yards. Darian Dupree, 10 carries, 33 yards. So, 34 carries, 130 yards from the rushing, from the running back group. So you ultimately figured that's their ultimate plan of attack was to try to run the ball, control the clock, get Oregon's offense to not be on the field as much. And it was a pretty good strategy. It almost worked. So I had to give Wisconsin a lot of credit. Receiving wise, not really that great. Again, you saw the quarterback totals, 12 catches, 96 yards, 1 touchdown. Not really great. It was an ugly game. It was the way that, Wisconsin wanted to play it. However, Oregon was definitely prepared. Oregon definitely did not, Oregon slacked in the beginning of this game, but you could tell you were just waiting for that moment like, damn, is Oregon going to lose this game or are they going to show up? And they eventually showed up. Not a fantastic game from Dylan Gabriel. You had 22 for 31, 218 yards, 1 interception. Not great. But the most important part is Jordan James, who's been the key to this team and this pretty much the Ducks for the past 2 years. 25 carries, 121 yards, 1 touchdown. So, I definitely wanted to make sure I gave this game its props. The receiving core definitely showed up again. The ball distribution, again, being there. 22 catches by the receivers, 218 yards. Evan Stewart was the leading receiver, 10 catches for 92 yards. Again, got to give this team props, finding another way to win, finding another way to overcome the adversity. The Oregon Ducks, this is why they're number 1 in college football, and this is why they're going to be number 1 going into the playoffs. So, barring anything unforeseen, barring them pretty much just shitting the bed or, allowing the team to get their best foot on them, or having their best night. And it can happen. I mean, granted, now that we know how the playoff works and how the schedule works, even if they lose, it's not necessarily a death knell for them, but let's just be honest. If they went out, it's automatic first round bye, and then, all bets are off at that point. But Oregon definitely looks like the favorite. Got to give them their props. And it's funny because, again, a lot of teams get into scenarios like that. They don't really handle the situation or the adversity. So, Oregon's been handling it. There's been a lot of times this year where we've questioned how legitimate, how good they've been. And there's times, rightfully so, that we should have questioned it. They didn't necessarily look as great as they should have in certain points, in certain situations. However, they have looked good in the moments they needed to, and most importantly, when it counts. So, again, shout out to the Ducks, and still number one. I definitely hopped into some of the other games too. One of the other ones that piqued my interest was Utah versus Colorado. Now, this game here was weird because starting out, Colorado had all the control. Colorado was dominating the game, pretty much had it from head to start. From start to finish, excuse me. And it then turned into a football game somewhere in late in the second, beginning of the third quarter. It turned into a football game, and shout out to Utah for not, slacking. And again, this is why I was talking about this conference. I was literally just saying this to you guys in the previous episode for Colorado. It is not going to be an easy road for them. Just because they're a good team and the Big 12 is not great as it once was in previous years, or is as strong as it was once in previous years, it doesn't mean that Colorado's going to have a cakewalk. However, what it was more or less speaking to is that Colorado is going to be tested. They are going to have moments and times where they're going to have to prove their worth and prove their mettle and show that they're one of the best teams and that they deserve to be in the playoff hunt. Again, they won 49-24. So again, the score looks a little bit misleading because, as I said, they started out dominant. Utah came back, and then Colorado was later able to pull away. Shedeur Sanders, 30 of 41, 340 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Proving he's going to be the number 1 quarterback taken off the board in the NFL draft and the 2025 draft. So no shock there. The rushing attack, surprisingly, was not really there for Colorado. Utah was prepared for that, especially from what I was seeing from the game. You definitely saw that Utah was not going to allow Colorado to run the ball profusively against them. 20 carries for 65 yards. However, there was 3 touchdowns because you had Isaiah Augustave, he had a touchdown. You had Travis Hunter, short yards, 5-yard run, touchdown. You also had, as Charlie Offerdahl, he had a touchdown. So again, rushing attack wasn't there as far as the yardage, but, short yards when they need them to get the touchdowns, when they need it, within 20 yards, they got it. So shout out to the Colorado Buffs for that. Receiving wise, that's where they destroyed Utah. Draylon Miller, 6 catches, 108 yards. LaJohntay Wester, who's really been coming on in the past couple of weeks, definitely a burner. Definitely interested to see how he projects going into his career later on in college and potentially into the NFL draft. 10 receptions, 77 yards. Will Shepard, 5 for 71. Again, Travis Hunter, 5 for 55. Savell Smalls, 1 for 12. So again, if you're talking about ball distribution, this is magnificent. 30 receptions for 340 yards, 3 touchdowns from your receiving core. So that was your receivers were giving you the output. Ultimately, what this game came down to was mental mistakes, some turnovers that really could have shaped the game. Bad interception by Shedeur, a fumble that also could have went the wrong way. Fumble that ultimately did go the wrong way, but it didn't really amount too much against Colorado. That's why, it was all right. But, again, it could have really, really went left for him. Looking at the team stats, like I said, looking at really how that really played out, the difference in this game, I believe, was 2nd and 3rd down. Looking here, if I'm correct, come on now, right here, 3rd down efficiency. Utah was killing it on 3rd down. They were 7 of 17. Utah, literally, though, again, 4th down, 0 for 1. Colorado, 3 of 11 on 3rd down, but was 2 of 2 on 4th down. That was the game. You go a bit further, you dig into the numbers. Colorado was out penalized. Excuse me. Colorado was out penalized, 5 for 49. Utah, but the turnovers, and not being able to be efficient on 4th down when it really counted, when they needed the yards and the points. That's really what ultimately caused Utah this game, and that's why they weren't able to climb back and ultimately win the game. So again, Colorado is showing that they're not perfect, but they're proving they're still one of the best teams in the country. They're proving that they're definitely going to be somebody that, they're not to be fucked with. You're not going to be able to just go in there and be like, oh, yeah, we got them. They can easily put up 34 on you, 40, and beat you. So, again, shout out to Colorado. 8-2 now, 6-1 in their conference. So, We'll see how this all shapes out. Like I said, their road is all leading to the Big 12 championship for them, as I've stated in a previous episode. They're going to have to win that game to really put themselves in playoff contention, to really give themselves a legitimate shot at possibly winning the national championship, or at least contending for it. Which, again, for the Buffs, that would be major. So again, shout out to Colorado. Shout out to Utah again for fighting, but just not enough talent to really stay in that game. Next game I wanted to get into was a bit of a weird one, but I was actually glad because, again, out of all these games that I wrote down, a lot of them wound up being very, very tight games all the way throughout to the end. And this one was definitely one of them. It was Clemson versus Pittsburgh. Clemson wound up winning the game 24-20, but the game did indicate how tight it was. You kind of felt like watching it that Clemson was going to win the game. But looking at it from the beginning to the middle, you kind of had the feeling that maybe an upset was coming on. It was definitely not an easy win for Clemson. Dabo Swinney and Klubnik were definitely sweating bullets. Again, and you got to give Pittsburgh credit because Pittsburgh knew that they were the underdog going into the game. They knew that, it wasn't going to necessarily be a guarantee for them to necessarily win. You had to really show and prove because, again, Clemson has the resume and the repertoire and the cachet that Pittsburgh necessarily hasn't had. Yeah, Pittsburgh's had Kenny Pickett. Yeah, Pittsburgh had Jordan Addison. That's about it. Outside of, Larry Fitzgerald once many moons ago, Darrelle Revis, not really that much really to hang your hat on if you're a Pittsburgh Panthers fan. It was interesting watching it, how it all played out. But digging into some of the numbers here, like I said, Clemson winning 24-20. Here we go here, y'all. All right, so looking at it now, this is really an ACC matchup, so it's kind of weird because, again, kind of used to seeing Pittsburgh in a totally different conference, a division being in the Big East, but that's dissolved now. So, again, two winning teams. Pittsburgh went into a 7-2. They're now 7-3. Clemson is now 8-2. So, shout out to Clemson for definitely pulling out that win, as much as it pains me to say that. But looking at the numbers, Cade Klubnik, 27-41, 286 yards, 88 yards, 2 touchdowns. So, got to give him props there. Definitely wasn't necessarily the most prolific passing game, but it was a good passing game. But Nate Yarnell from Pittsburgh, want to give him props too. 34-54, 350 yards, touchdown and interception. Definitely wasn't scared to throw the ball. I mean, again, Pittsburgh was playing to win this game. They were playing to upset Clemson. It was one of the games throughout the week that I said in the previous episode going in that I thought was going to be a game that could be a potential upset. It was a game that had to be circled, that had to be watched. Rushing attack was not there really for either team. As a good collective, Clemson, 27 carries, 58 yards. They had one rushing touchdown. Pittsburgh, a little bit better, 33 for 88 yards, one touchdown. Not really great. But the receiving attacks for both teams, this is really where the game had opened up and really where the ball was being diversified. Clemson had 27 catches, and this is collective from the receiving corps. 27 catches, 288 yards, 2 touchdowns. You had Pittsburgh with 34 receptions, 350 yards, 1 touchdown. So again, this is where, again, college is more or less emulating the NFL, more of a passing league, seeing that ball being diversified in between the hashes, outside the hashes. It was very, very much a good game. Turnovers were definitely a part of it. Clemson had some fumbles, Pittsburgh had some fumbles. Again, this game was very tight. Clemson, though they're 8-2, they're a deceptive 8-2. That's why they're ranked 20th. They'll probably be ranked a little bit higher this week going into the standings. But make no mistake, that team is flawed. They're definitely going to probably lose another game along the way. But that being said, speaking of just against this game, they played well, held on at the end. So shout out to the Clemson Tigers for showing improvement and definitely holding on and winning the game and not being upset. Because, again, it's not like Pittsburgh is garbage, but would have been definitely an upset. You're ranked 20th, going against a team that's unranked with a winning record. Would have been a good look for Clemson, definitely. Next game was a rivalry game that I definitely wanted to get into. This one was a bit funny for me because I've been kind of on this guy since the beginning of the year. Since I've started the show, really. It was actually one of my, maybe within my first or second episode, maybe possibly second or third episode, I was talking about college football, doing like a spring recap. And I was talking about Brian Kelly and how he lost 3 dynamic players going into the offseason. You lose Jaden Daniels, who wins the Heisman. You lose Brian Thomas and you lose Malik Neighbors. Okay. So we're all giving him benefit of the doubt. We're all like, okay, all right, even though he's lost those guys, he's Brian Kelly. He's had success in previous regimes, Notre Dame, Cincinnati before that, so this guy's going to be okay. It's not going to really be an issue. Not only were they upset, but they were dominated. Florida won 27-16, possibly one of the biggest, if not the biggest upset of the weekend. Garrett Nussmeier, this kid, I like this kid a lot, but here's something that kind of bothered me a little bit with Garrett Nussmeier. Garrett Nussmeier did a lot of talking in the spring when they were having a lot of their spring camp and spring warm-ups. You saw them showing their offensive firepower and their plan of attack, to attack, opposing cornerbacks and defenses this year. And you saw pretty much how they were saying, Garrett Nussmeier is a cannon. And Garrett Nussmeier was feeling like ultimately, Jane Daniels was here. That's why I wasn't really getting my opportunity. Now with Jane Daniels being gone, I'll have more opportunities. Hey, man, listen, 27-47, 260 yards, 1 touchdown. That ain't necessarily going to lose you the game, but that ain't it. That LSU defense is fucking atrocious. Garrett Nussmeier, they pretty much say he's going to throw us out of a lot of problems. It's not working. It's not working. Your rushing attack was there, 44 carries, 130 yards. Hence, you had to run the ball 44 times because your passing attack. When you've equally thrown the ball as much as you've run it and you lose to a team that's unranked, it's not really a good sign that you're a good football team. And again, they're 6-4. Nobody was expecting them to be as good as they were last year. Again, losing 3 top talents. They all went to the NFL. Daniels, Thomas, Neighbors. Get it. Completely understood. There's some guys, and Mike Norvell, Florida State, he could be put in this category. There's some guys getting exposed this year that without certain talent, you just can't win. Yeah, I get the NIL. I get the portals is hell. I get that it is, strenuous, for lack of better words, to get a lot of these guys in here to buy in. And, at any point where a guy could just up and leave and take his services elsewhere, I completely understand it. But at LSU, with the tradition that you've had with all the talk and the shit talking and the moxie, it's like I've said early in the year, Brian Kelly, you're not fucking low. This is a shitty performance, bro. Your receivers, 28 receptions, 262 yards, ball distribution there. What is it really that cost you the game? Because, again, DJ Lagway, 13 to 26, 226, 1 touchdown. You only allow 113 rushing yards. They gave up 130. So you're wondering, well, how in the hell did LSU lose this game? Seems like it was a pretty even game. Seems like LSU was doing a lot of what they wanted to do. See, and that's where the deceptive part is. Because when Brian Kelly loses, it's always usually in between it's in the inches. It's in between the nuanceical parts of the game that's not really being noticed. The third downs, the fourth down efficiency. How were you effectively on first and second down? And looking here, what do you know? Third down, 13 to 24. You're like, oh, fantastic. Fourth down, 2 of 4. You went for it 4 times, you only converted twice. That ain't great. And granted, think about this. Florida was 3 of 9 on third down. Didn't have to go for it on fourth down at all. So you're wondering, where did this game come down to? Turnovers. LSU turns the ball over. You fumble the ball. You put the ball in bad situations. You don't play clean, efficient football. And LSU's been getting away with this for 2 or 3 years now. Brian Kelly's been getting away with their defense being trash and that team being suspect. But because they've won and they've had good players and they've looked flashy, they got exposed against Florida State a year ago. They got exposed against other teams a year ago. No one sat here and said that this team was immaculate or above reproach. But Brian Kelly made it seem like, this team was going to be contending for, the national title. Then you got him getting in players' faces, talking about guys being uncoachable and shit. Listen, wasn't there for the situation. More than likely, Brian Kelly had to do what he had to do, in all fairness. But when you win time of possession, 41-18, when Florida is out penalized 7-55, but you can't stop them from running the ball, they're killing you running. They're killing you passing the ball. You're not a good football team. So definitely want to give, like I said, I don't want to, just shit talk the Gators, even though as much as I hate the Florida Gators, I want to give the Gators props. They definitely had a game plan and a plan of attack for LSU. Like I said, I went over DJ Lagway's numbers. Rushing attack, I went over that. Receiving totals, 13 catches, 226 yards. Much more effective and efficient game from DJ Lagway than he had against Georgia, albeit Georgia a way better defensive team than LSU, but way more efficient, way better passing attack. So credit to the Florida Gators, credit to their running game, credit to their defense, because their defense really showed up, harassed Nussmeier, harassed that LSU offense, and forced them to really just, make decisions he didn't really want to make, and made Brian Kelly frustrated. And, that's always a great day whenever you can get Brian Kelly pissed off, in my book at least. Missouri and South Carolina, like I said, that game was pretty interesting too. Looking at Missouri and South Carolina, that game ended up being 34-30, South Carolina getting the win. However, South Carolina looked like for a large portion of the game, they were definitely going to be upset. It was not something that I was expecting. I'll be honest with you, I didn't expect the game to be that tight. But again, this is college football. This is the beauty of it. Not every game is going to be guaranteed for you. You're not going to necessarily be guaranteed to walk in every game and blow out the opponent because you're better than them on paper or, whatever fucking cliche you want to use. But either way, South Carolina had a great attack and great comeback, I should say, against Mizzou. Mizzou, and again, this was a ranked game, so this game mattered. Mizzou was ready. They were prepared for South Carolina. I got to give them credit. The rushing attack was there. They ran the ball 37 times, 144 yards. They definitely were trying to destroy South Carolina with the rushing attack. Again, South Carolina kind of knew going into this game what was going to be required of them. They knew already that they're technically the better team as far as ranking goes. But again, Missouri came in looking at large portions, 3/4 of the game. I'm thinking Missouri's a better team, being honest with you. But this is why South Carolina's good. This is why South Carolina's been one of the best teams in college football this year. Not great, but one of the better teams. Like I said, ball distribution, you got to give it to South Carolina. 21 catches, 353 yards, 5 touchdowns. Their quarterback was pretty much on fire that game. Lenora Sellers, 21 of 30, 353 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. So, got to give South Carolina credit. Like I said, they did everything they were supposed to. Missouri put up a hell of a fight. But these are the things that it comes down to ultimately. How do you respond in these moments? How do you show poise? Brady Cook, quarterback, for Missouri fumbled, didn't lose it, but just little dumb things. Especially in games like that, games that close, is usually what? The efficiency on 3rd and 4th down, turnovers, time possession, the atypical things you expect. But when you really look at this game, like I said, like just how that last game, that Florida LSU game was a bit weird and wonky. Look at this. 3rd down efficiency. Missouri was 1 for 9 on 3rd down. It's not good. By any stretch of the imagination, not good. 1 of 9 on 3rd down. And then you got, look at this here. You're going even further. 4th down. 1 of 2. But then now, albeit, look at South Carolina, 4 of 10 on 3rd down, 2 of 5 on 4th down. Still better than Missouri. So, it's the little things like that. Passing attack, like I said, obviously the credit goes to South Carolina there. Rushing attack, got to give it to Missouri. Turnovers, they were both split, but, Missouri was out-penalized. Some of those costly penalties. Both teams had interceptions, but Missouri had costly penalties at times where they didn't need it, times where it was kind of drive killers, stalled drives. So, again, credit to South Carolina and their plan of attack. They did exactly what they needed to do to come back and win the game. Because Missouri won, we weren't going to look at either one of these teams like they were ass, but one of those teams were dropping a bit further in the rankings, closer to 25 or out of the 25 after this loss. So I want to definitely give credit to South Carolina for holding serve. And hopefully Missouri doesn't drop too far for their credit because they played a hell of a game, but it's probably a good chance they're probably going to drop a bit further. Last but not least, I want to touch on Tennessee versus Georgia, Vols versus Dogs. This one was a bit weird for me because I was under the impression that Tennessee was going to be way better prepared for this game. When I watched this game, I thought Tennessee was going to be way better prepared, and they weren't. Credit to the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia won 31-17. masterclass on defense late in this game. It was one of those games where you clearly saw where Georgia wanted to establish how dominant they were, how they were more of a physical team. And they were. They definitely showed it. I'll go over some of the box score numbers here real quick because Georgia, it's funny because Georgia doesn't have the rosters they've had the past 2 or 3 years, but they still have Kirby Smart, still got Carson Beck, and they still have that physicality and mentality that they're better than everybody and they're more physical than you. And sometimes even when that's not true, it plays into your hands when you're trying to win football games and you're trying to beat some of the better teams in college football. That psyche and that edge really matters, especially when you have a championship pedigree behind it. But it wasn't easy. You know, it wasn't like Georgia was dominating this from the beginning. It was a tight game all the way through. You know, Tennessee got up early. They were making coming a lot of little plays early. Georgia's defense, you know, again, it wasn't not what it's been the past few years, but sound, efficient, kept them ultimately in the game. Got to give Georgia credit. Tennessee, again, settling for field goals early, something you saw when they played Kentucky. Kentucky being a team of lesser talent, it doesn't really phase you or you sweat it as much. But when you do see like, well, damn, they're doing that against Kentucky and they get, ugh. And then you're playing Georgia, and it's like, oh, all right. Well, I mean, they're winning. They're up 10-0, but you're settling for field goals. And y'all know my adage. Y'all know the line if you know football. If you're settling for field goals instead of scoring touchdowns, you're going to get your ass kicked. Simple as that. Georgia pretty much knifed down the field. Carson Beck was getting what he wanted early on. He looked real good. He looked sharp. He looked like he was focused and prepared for that game. He looked confident. Georgia was able to get to a lead, 14-10 at that point. Tennessee was just having issues with penalties. Like I said, it was just one of those things where you saw early where, okay, this is going to be an issue. They're going to struggle. They're going to struggle because they haven't really been in this moment. And every time we're ready to crown them and put them in the higher echelon of teams in college football and put them in that place and category, they seem to falter and fold. Looking here, third down efficiency, 10 of 18, 1 of 2 on fourth down. Georgia was 8 of 14. It's things like that, again, that will cost you games. Again, passing attack, got to give it to Georgia. Carson Beck was lighting their ass up. Rushing attack, got to give it to Tennessee. Tennessee was definitely trying to control the clock. Time possession wasn't really that much apart. Tennessee was 29 minutes, 31 seconds. Georgia, 30 minutes, 29 seconds. So you clearly see that Tennessee was they had a plan of attack that they were trying to implement, which was running the ball. It just didn't work. Got out-penalized again. Penalties. Something I watched during that game and saw. Penalties cost them. 9 penalties, 70 yards. You're not beating Georgia like that. You're not beating Georgia like that. You're not beating any real good team like that, to be honest with you. It looked like a physical, old-school SEC football game for the most part. And then Georgia was able to just keep the pressure on and just pull away. And, fourth down, Tennessee's trying to go for it late. Didn't work. It is just one of those things where, again, Georgia, not once what they were. However, still an elite team, still a team that has to be considered. Still, definitely got to be put higher than Tennessee now in the rankings. If Tennessee was 7 going into the week and Georgia was 12, definitely got to be higher. But, I don't know if Georgia's going to go back to the national championship and win. However, Georgia's not going to be disregarded or scoffed at. You're going to have your best shit to play them. So, that being said, that's going to do it for this episode, guys. I thank you so much for watching. Again, as always, like, share, and subscribe. Check the show out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Substack. NFL Week 11 recap video will be coming up soon and shortly. Definitely stay tuned for more updates and episodes. And I love you guys. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day.